The diner's neon sign buzzed like a dying insect, casting a sickly glow over the cracked pavement where Marcus stood, shivering in a threadbare jacket. His stomach growled louder than the city's evening hum, but the stares from passers-by cut deeper than hunger. A black man, homeless, invisible until he stepped through the door of Rosie's diner, where everything changed. Inside, the air smelled of grease and coffee, thick with the chatter of late-shift workers and truckers. Marcus hesitated at the threshold, his worn sneakers scuffing the linoleum. Every eye in the room snapped to him, and the weight of their judgment pressed like a fist against his chest. He wasn't here to beg, not tonight. He just needed a moment of warmth, a scrap of kindness. But the whispers started before he even reached the counter. "Get him out of here," a burly man in a flannel shirt muttered, his fork stabbing at a pile of mashed potatoes. "This ain't no charity kitchen." His buddy, a wiry guy with a faded baseball cap, smirked and leaned back, adding, "Yeah, place is dirty enough without his kind." The words weren't new to Marcus, but they still burned, each syllable a reminder of the world that had spit him out. At the counter, Ellie, a 27-year-old waitress with tired eyes and a stubborn streak, caught the exchange. She'd worked double shifts at Rosie's for 3 years, pouring coffee for bigots and dreamers alike. But something about Marcus, his quiet dignity, the way his shoulders sagged under more than just hunger, stopped her cold. She slammed a glass of water on the counter, louder than necessary, and shot the flannel guy a look that could have shattered glass. "You got a problem, Carl, take it outside," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the diner's hum. Carl's face reddened, his fork clattering to the plate. "You serious, Ellie? You're gonna defend some bum over paying customers?" The word bum landed like a slap, and Marcus flinched, his fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. The room seemed to shrink, every stare a spotlight, every whisper a blade. Ellie didn't blink. "He's a customer if I say he is. Now eat your damn potatoes." The air crackled with tension, a storm brewing in the cramped diner. Marcus shifted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want trouble, ma'am. Just maybe some water." His eyes, dark and weary, held a story Ellie couldn't read but felt in her bones. She nodded, sliding a menu toward him. "Pick something. On the house." The diner erupted. Carl shoved his plate back, standing so fast his chair screeched. "On the house? You're giving free food to this guy." He jabbed a finger toward Marcus, who kept his gaze on the counter, jaw tight. The wiry guy joined in, his voice dripping venom. "What's next, Ellie? You gonna let every filthy drifter eat for free? He's probably gonna rob the place." A few others nodded, their murmurs swelling into a chorus of resentment. A woman in a corner booth hissed, "Shouldn't even be allowed in here. Look at him." Ellie's heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "He's a person, same as you, and I decide who eats." She turned to Marcus, softer now. "What'll it be?" Marcus hesitated, his fingers tracing the menu's edge. "Just a burger, please." His humility hit Ellie like a punch. She saw her younger brother in him, the one she'd lost to addiction years ago, another soul the world had discarded. As she called the order to the kitchen, Carl stormed toward the counter, his buddies trailing like wolves. "This is bullshit," he spat, close enough for Marcus to smell the beer on his breath. "You think you can just waltz in here, boy, and get handouts?" The slur hung in the air, unspoken but loud as a gunshot. Marcus's hands trembled, but he didn't look up. Ellie stepped between them, her 5'4" frame a wall of defiance. "Back off, Carl. Now." The diner fell silent, forks frozen midair, coffee cups forgotten. The wiry guy laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Oh, Ellie's playing hero for the homeless guy. Ain't that sweet?" He leaned closer, his voice a venomous whisper. "You know what he is, don't you? You know why he's out there on the street." The implication was clear, and it lit a fire in Ellie's chest. She didn't know Marcus's story, but she knew hate when she saw it, and she'd be damned if it won tonight. "Get out," she said, her voice a low growl. "All of you, pay your bill and go, or I call the cops. Carl's eyes narrowed, his fists clenching, but Ellie didn't budge. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, until a new voice cut through a deep, calm baritone from the back of the diner. Enough! Every head turned. A man in a tailored coat stood near the kitchen door, his presence commanding despite his unassuming stance. He was older, maybe 60, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see through everyone. The diner staff knew him as Mr. Hayes, the quiet owner who rarely showed up, always leaving the place to his manager. But tonight he was here, and his gaze locked on Carl. "You heard the lady," Hayes said, stepping forward. "Pay and leave, or I'll make sure you're banned for life." His tone was even, but it carried a weight that silenced the room. Carl muttered something under his breath, tossed a crumpled 20 on the counter, and stormed out with his crew, the bell above the door jangling in their wake. Ellie exhaled, her hands shaking as she turned to Marcus. "Your burger's coming. Sit tight." He nodded, still staring at the counter, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for the next blow. But the diner's energy had shifted. Some customers looked away, ashamed. Others whispered, curious. Mr. Hayes approached, his polished shoes clicking on the linoleum. He glanced at Marcus, then at Ellie, and something like a smile flickered on his face. "You did good, Ellie," he said quietly. "Not many would have stood up like that." She shrugged, brushing off the compliment, but her cheeks flushed. Hayes turned to Marcus, his voice softer. "You're welcome here. Always." Marcus looked up, surprised, and for the first time, Ellie saw a spark in his eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. The burger arrived, steaming and simple, and Marcus ate in silence, each bite deliberate, like he was savoring more than just the food. Ellie watched him, her mind racing. She'd seen plenty of hard cases at Rosie's, runaways, lost souls, but Marcus was different. There was a quiet strength in him, a resilience that didn't match the tattered clothes or the hollow cheeks. She wanted to ask his story, but the diner was still buzzing, and the night wasn't over. As Marcus finished, wiping his hands on a napkin, Mr. Hayes returned, leaning against the counter. "You know," he said, addressing the room but looking at Marcus, "this place has been around for 30 years, seen all kinds of folks, but it's only as good as the people in it." He paused, his eyes on Marcus. "And some people are worth more than they seem." Ellie frowned, catching a strange weight in his words. Before she could ask, Marcus spoke, his voice steady for the first time. "I appreciate the meal, ma'am. And you, sir?" He nodded at Hayes, who smiled faintly, like he knew something no one else did. Marcus stood, leaving a crumpled dollar on the counter, probably all he had, and headed for the door. "Wait," Ellie called, her voice sharper than she meant. "You don't have to go." Marcus paused, his hand on the door, and looked back. "You've done enough," he said, his voice soft but firm. "More than most." And then he was gone, the bell jangling in his wake. The diner felt emptier without him, though Ellie couldn't say why. She busied herself wiping the counter, but her mind kept replaying the night, the hate in Carl's voice, the fire in her own chest, the quiet strength in Marcus's eyes. Mr. Hayes lingered, watching her with that same unreadable look. Finally, he spoke. "You ever wonder who owns this place, Ellie?" She stopped wiping, her brow furrowing. "You do, don't you? You're always here, checking in." Hayes chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Not quite. I manage it. The real owner, he's got a bigger story than you'd guess." He nodded toward the door where Marcus had disappeared. "And you just fed him dinner." Ellie's heart skipped. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper, her mind scrambling to catch up. Hayes leaned closer, his voice low. "Marcus Jackson. He built this diner from nothing. Lost it all to bad deals and worse luck. Been on the streets for years, but he still owns the deed. Never sold it, not even when he had nothing left." The words hit like a freight train. Ellie stared at the door, her hands frozen on the counter. The man she'd defended, the man Carl had spat on, was the one who'd made this place her place possible. She thought of his quiet dignity, the dollar he'd left, the way he'd thanked her. Shame and awe twisted in her gut, and she realized the night wasn't just about a burger. It was about something bigger, something human. Ellie's pulse hammered in her ears as Mr. Hayes's words sank in. Marcus Jackson, the man she'd just served a burger to, the man Carl and his cronies had sneered at, owned Rosie's diner. Her diner. The linoleum beneath her feet. The chipped counter she'd wiped 1,000 times. The neon sign flickering outside, all of it was his. She felt dizzy, like the world had tilted and she was scrambling to find her footing. "Why didn't he say anything?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hayes leaned back, his eyes distant. Marcus isn't one for grand gestures. He's been through too much loss, too much to care about proving himself to folks like Carl. He paused, glancing at the door where Marcus had vanished. But he sees everything. Always has. Ellie's mind raced, replaying every moment of the night. Marcus's quiet dignity, the way he'd left that crumpled dollar, the weight in his eyes when he'd thanked her, it all made sense now. She wanted to run after him, to say something, anything, but the diner was still humming with customers, and her shift wasn't over. She grabbed a rag, wiping the counter again just to keep her hands busy. But her thoughts were with Marcus, out there in the cold, carrying a story she couldn't even begin to understand. The next morning, Ellie arrived early, her breath fogging in the crisp dawn air. She couldn't shake the image of Marcus's face, the way he'd stood tall despite the hate thrown at him. She'd lain awake all night, piecing together what Hayes had told her. Marcus had built Rosie's from the ground up, a black man in a city that didn't make it easy, turning a rundown shack into a neighborhood staple. Bad investments and a string of betrayals had stripped him of everything: his savings, his home, his reputation. Yet he'd held on to the deed, a quiet act of defiance against a world that had tried to erase him. As she unlocked the diner, Ellie noticed something new. A small, handwritten note taped to the door. In neat, deliberate script, it read, "Kindness matters. Keep the change." No signature, but she knew it was Marcus. Her chest tightened, and she tucked the note into her apron, determined to find him. The day passed in a blur of coffee refills and breakfast orders, but Ellie's eyes kept drifting to the door, hoping Marcus would walk through. He didn't. By noon, the diner was packed, and the usual mix of regulars filled the booths. Carl and his crew hadn't shown up, thank God, but the tension from last night lingered, like a stain that wouldn't scrub out. Ellie overheard snippets of conversation. Some customers whispered about the homeless guy, others about her standing up to Carl. A few shot her approving nods, but others avoided her gaze, their silence louder than words. Around 2 p.m., a new face walked in, a woman in her 50s, sharply dressed, with a no-nonsense air. She introduced herself as Lena, a lawyer who'd been looking for Marcus. "He's hard to track down," she said, sliding into a booth. "But I heard about last night. You're Ellie, right?" Ellie nodded, wary. Lena leaned forward, her voice low. "Marcus has a case to reclaim what's his. This diner, his assets. There's proof the deals that ruined him were fraudulent. I need to find him, and I need people like you to back him up." Ellie's heart raced. "Back him up how?" Lena explained. Marcus's old business partner, a man named Vincent, had manipulated contracts to seize control of the diner years ago. A loophole in the paperwork meant Marcus still legally owned it, but Vincent's influence and the city's bias had kept Marcus silenced. Lena was building a case, but Marcus's distrust of the system, and his life on the streets, made him reluctant to fight. "I'll help," Ellie said without hesitation. "But he's gone. I don't know where to find him." Lena handed her a card. "He'll come back here. It's his place, even if he doesn't act like it. When he does, tell him I'm ready to fight for him." Ellie pocketed the card, a spark of purpose igniting in her chest. She didn't just want to find Marcus, she wanted to make things right. That evening, as the dinner rush slowed, Ellie made a decision. She grabbed a to-go bag, packed it with a hot meal, and slipped out the back door. The city streets were harsh under the sodium glow of streetlights, and she wandered for hours, checking alleys and shelters, asking strangers if they'd seen a man in a tattered jacket with kind, weary eyes. "Nolak." By midnight, her feet ached, and the bag of food had gone cold. She returned to the diner, defeated, and taped a new note to the door. Marcus, you're welcome here. Always, Ellie. Days passed, then a week. Ellie kept the note up, refreshing it when rain smudged the ink. She started setting aside meals, leaving them in a cooler by the back door with Marcus's name on them. Word spread among the homeless community, and soon others came, shyly accepting food. Ellie didn't care about the cost to cover it herself if she had to. The diner became a quiet beacon, a place where people like Marcus weren't turned away. Some customers grumbled, but others pitched in, leaving extra tips or bringing blankets. Rosie's was changing, and Ellie felt it in her bones. One night, as she was closing up, the bell jingled. Marcus stood in the doorway, cleaner than before, his jacket patched but his eyes brighter. Ellie froze, the broom in her hand forgotten. "You're back," she said, her voice catching. Marcus nodded, stepping inside. "Heard you've been looking for me." His voice was soft, but there was a new strength in it, like a man remembering who he was. Ellie told him about Lena, the case, the chance to take back what was his. Marcus listened, his face unreadable, then shook his head. "I don't want the diner back, Ellie. Not like that. It's not about owning things, it's about what this place means." He gestured to the empty booths, the counter where she'd served him. "You made it mean something again. That's enough." Ellie's throat tightened. "It's not enough. You built this place. You deserve it." Marcus smiled, a small, sad curve of his lips. "I built it to be a home for people who didn't have one. You're doing that now. Let it be." But Ellie wasn't ready to let it go. She called Lena, and over the next week, they convinced Marcus to meet. He was hesitant, scarred by years of betrayal, but Ellie's persistence and the memory of that burger, that moment of kindness, wore him down. The case moved fast. Lena was a bulldog, unearthing documents that proved Vincent's fraud. The diner was Marcus's, free and clear, and Vincent faced charges. Word spread, and the community rallied. Regulars who'd once whispered about Marcus now shook his hand, their faces flushed with shame or pride. Carl and his crew never showed up again, but Ellie didn't care. The diner was full of new faces, people who'd heard the story, who saw Rosie's as a symbol of something better. On the day Marcus officially reclaimed the diner, he didn't throw a party or make a speech. Instead, he stood behind the counter, serving coffee alongside Ellie, his hands steady as he poured. The neon sign buzzed above, but it felt warmer now, like a heartbeat. Customers filled the booths, their chatter lively, their differences forgotten in the glow of shared meals. Marcus caught Ellie's eye and nodded, a silent thank you. She nodded back, her chest swelling with something she couldn't name: hope, maybe, or redemption. As the night wound down, Ellie taped a new wooden sign to the wall, its handwritten words bold and clear: "All are welcome." Marcus saw it and smiled, his eyes glistening. "You're something else, Ellie," he said. She shrugged, wiping the counter. "Just doing my job." But they both knew it was more than that. It was a stand against hate, a bridge across divides, a reminder that one act of kindness could ripple outward, changing everything. The diner closed late, but the light stayed on, a beacon in the dark. What do you think? Where does justice lie in a story like this? How do we heal the divides that tear us apart?